Something that's been teased within the past couple of years in relation to video games or game consoles is a potential Dreamcast Mini, and that's something that I believe Sega had considered, but for whatever reason, nothing had materialized. And I think the question would be: Is a Sega Dreamcast Mini, is it worth it? Would it be an attraction in this day and age? Um, I mean, you got to look at a lot of the games that appeared on Dreamcast during the late '90s, early 2000s. A lot of them were iconic. Games like Sonic Adventure, Shenmue, Soul Calibur, Crazy Taxi, Resident Evil, Code Veronica. Um, yeah, there were a lot of games that appeared on Dreamcast that people love, and some people still play to this day. But I feel like the landscape of gaming has evolved a lot since then because Dreamcast, when it first came out in '98, it was way ahead of its time because I think it was one of the first game systems to have like crossplay. Because back in the day, Dreamcast had crossplay with PlayStation 2, something that I didn't know about until recently. And I don't think it was something that a lot of people really knew about for the most part because they never tried, doing crossplay. And that tells me right there that at one point, Sega and Sony had like a really strong relationship back in the day, and this was all before Sega stopped making consoles in 2001, and the Sega Dreamcast managed to sell roughly over like 9 million in terms of units sold, and I think somewhere around the ballpark of 600 games were produced, and because of that, I don't feel like that console sold as much as it could have because I do feel that during that time period, the PlayStation 2 blew up in terms of popularity. The PS1 was still massively popular. People were still playing the N64. GameCube came out back in 2001, which is the same year Sega stopped making game systems. And I believe that was the same year that they discontinued the Dreamcast console. So a lot of things happened. Oh, and also, Microsoft released the very first Xbox console back in 2001 as well, and it was just a different time for gaming. Things were changing. Competition was becoming more fierce, and as a result, Sega didn't have any need whatsoever to produce any more game systems. Instead, they became a third-party publisher that would have their games on Nintendo consoles and on PlayStation consoles during the 2000s and the teens decade. And that's still the case for the most part. But recently, a lot of people have been speculating that the Xbox Series X might possibly be Microsoft's last game system because they're supposed to be moving towards like cloud-based gaming, along with the fact that the Xbox consoles are not selling as much as their competitors. Like the Xbox One didn't sell nearly as much as the PS4 or the Nintendo Switch, and the same thing for the Xbox Series X. It's getting its ass kicked by the PlayStation 5 in relation to sales. And if Microsoft does indeed drop out of the console wars or they're just no longer a part of it, it's going to leave mainly Nintendo and Sony, like for the most part, as competitors against one another. And some people feel like this would be a perfect time, if any, for Sega to possibly re-enter the console wars because you look at you look at 2001, Sega stopped making consoles that year, and that was the same year where Microsoft entered the console war. So I mean, do you guys feel that like Sega would do better in the console wars in this day and age if they ever made like a Dreamcast 2 or anything like that? I'm not exactly sure about that. I do feel like it'd be intriguing, but for the most part, I don't think we're ever going to get another Sega console at all, and that their console making days are over. However, I'd love to see a Dreamcast Mini sometime in the future because there's a lot of high profile games from that time period that didn't get the type of exposure that it deserved back in the day because there weren't too many people in America who were higher on Dreamcast because PlayStation was more popular back in the day. But you look at some of the top games, they've already been remastered, like Shenmue and Sonic Adventure and all that stuff. They've been remastered at some point or another. But I do know that Sega has definitely expressed interest in reviving older IPs and stuff like that. And some people look at that as a potential step towards them possibly coming out with another game system and re-entering the console wars and all that stuff. I wouldn't get my hopes up, and I don't think I would cross my fingers either on that. But I feel like a Dreamcast Mini is something that would be a massive attraction because if the SNES Mini was a big attraction back in 2017, um, how come Dreamcast wouldn't be? Because Dreamcast was way ahead of its time. It had online gameplay, cross-play. It was it was pretty much like one of the first consoles aside from Sega Saturn to feature arcade quality gameplay. It didn't have really any constraints or anything like that. You can have arcade quality gameplay that supports up to 4 players at the same time. And I'm talking about games like, Power Stone and all that. Those games were classic. I wouldn't mind seeing, Sega revive Power Stone as well, but I'm not exactly sure whether or not that genre of gaming is an attraction in this day and age because Power Stone was more of an arena type fighting game or what have you. But yeah, I feel like Sega could definitely revive some older IPs and even create some new ones that would connect with casuals for the most part, because it seems like Sega, for the longest time, has been catering to, I guess, a niche audience of gamers, which is cool because a lot of the stuff that they made in their franchises, they developed cult followings over the years. And I feel like just because of that, a Dreamcast Mini has the potential to maybe do at least 1 mil if Sega ever decide to make that a reality. But I don't know. It's been a couple of years, and this is something that's been talked about since 2022, to my knowledge. And I feel like if Sega wanted to make that happen, they would have done so already. But I wouldn't necessarily get my hopes up on this. And I don't know. Hopefully, Sega does something big because I heard they have some type of super game project that's supposed to be starting sometime in the future, like in 2025 or 2026. And I'd like to know more details about that. And hopefully, that's something we'll learn more about either this year or in 2025.